Autonomy comes from the Greek words auto, meaning self, and nomos, meaning law or custom. And it refers to the capacity to make an uncoerced decision, having the freedom to act according to your own will. What's that got to do with my video today? Well, it might seem in our modern world that you have less than you want. I talk to customers all the time who feel crushed and trapped in unending repetitive tasks day in, day out, wishing they could chase after their own dreams and passions on their own terms. At the end of the day, they want to choose the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how of their workday without having to answer to someone else. Those people I talk to just want to do something that feels meaningful and exciting to them. Something that's really going to work for their future instead of getting caught up in the mundaneness of a clock in, clock out job where they're just under someone else's thumb. And I've been in those same exact shoes, wearing that same hat of yearning for something more. I started out in the games industry before mobile games were even a thing on your phone. And after a while, I started dreaming of having my own business so I could be like the CEO, leave when he wanted, work when he wanted. The moment for me came when I began to think, where did I really want to be in the next 10 years? And I asked myself, what will my future self thank me for today? I could see the writing on the wall that I was going to be stuck like this forever unless I decided to change. This is when I decided that I needed to chase after my own business, because in a decade I didn't still want to be having a boss making choices for me. I wanted and needed to write my own scripts. It was the only way forward for me. This is when I started working on my own business at night in my free time, and after some point I knew it was the right thing to do for me full time. Now here I am today. I'm sharing my journey with others just like me back then. Looking back on it, I thought about the source of that longing. What was the thing that was sat in the pit of my stomach, driving me to chase entrepreneurial success, even though I had the security of a routine job? So I eventually got into business coaching. I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs that couldn't stand the traditional work environment. It felt like a losing battle for control, which led them to feel like they were just not who they wanted to be. They had these terrifying thoughts of looking back on their life and seeing this regret about not pursuing their passions on their own terms, fearing that they'd be stuck in mediocre forever. So what's the source of all this? What sets entrepreneurs apart from those who are perfectly content with a 9 to 5? Well, as I started to study psychology, I became familiar with these things called needs. Our emotions, our drives, our passions in life, they're all informed by them. Now, you can find a list of them in a quick workbook that I've put together for you, and you can see that in the link below. They're the words really which you use to describe the most important elements in life that we need, that connect to every aspect of our well-being. When we have unmet needs, we tend to feel uncomfortable emotions like resentment, despair, passion, anger, anxiety. To give you a quick example, if your need for financial security isn't being met, you might experience this thing that we call anxiety. It's our brain's communication system. It's telling us something isn't quite right. These needs are completely unique to each one of us, but it's not to say that there aren't some trends. Maybe Joe's an artist who has an intense need for creativity, and Martha might be a nomad who needs adventure in her everyday life. And as for me, I'm ADHD and I have a constant need for stimulation and novelty, and many of you will do too. For entrepreneurs, the common need for pretty much all of us is actually freedom. But even more specific than freedom, what we really want is power over ourselves. And that brings us back to the word autonomy, which I mentioned earlier. The power to make our own choices, build our own routines, and walk our own paths without having to answer to anyone else for these decisions. The need for freedom is something that really does bind most entrepreneurs together, especially when we long to accomplish something that's actually really meaningful for us, which we maybe can't find in the traditional workplace. An article from UN News talks about freedom as a need, particularly in this case for female entrepreneurs, saying that the drive for that freedom, that balance that we often seek as a woman, emanates from our passion, from our dreams, but mainly from being able to contribute enthusiastically towards building a better future. Maybe you're thinking right now, I know I want to have the freedom to make my own work decisions, and I know that entrepreneurship will provide that for me. But there's just something that's holding you back. So the question is, why do people stay in jobs that they hate instead of chasing after freedom through entrepreneurship? What's the invisible roadblock that finds itself in the path towards power over self? The most common answer is the fear and anxiety that I mentioned earlier. Let's look at a couple of examples of this. Sarah might be a talented graphic designer, feels stifled in her corporate job due to its lack of creative freedom and rigid structure, despite the financial security it offers. She dreams of starting her own design business to choose her projects and work on her own terms. However, the fear of inconsistent income and potential business failure holds her back, creating an internal conflict between her need for independence and the need for losing financial stability. Alex might be ADHD and he finds a lot of comfort in the traditional workplace due to its structure and external accountability, which keeps him on track. But the lack of autonomy also stifles his creativity and his freedom to work on tasks in his own way. When Alex decides to start his own business, the initial excitement turns into anxiety as his productivity declines without any external accountability at all, and the fear of financial insecurity starts to grow, leaving him wondering if owning his own business was actually the right idea after all. This constant fight between the unignorable need for freedom and the constant fears we have can cause burnout for new entrepreneurs, or for those who want to give it a go, leaving their dreams and passions in the dust. I used to think there were aspects of my personality that would hold me back from success. As someone who now knows that they're ADHD, impulsivity and struggles with emotional control and other issues made me doubt whether I was really set out to be an entrepreneur. And I'd think to myself, I'll probably end up buying things I don't need, leaving me with no financial buffer when I need it. There's no way I'm going to succeed as a business owner. This back and forth between impulsive tendencies and the need for financial buffer made me question my potential as an entrepreneur. And that's only one bit of it. The list of fears that hold you and me back can just go on and on. But they do hold you back from what you really need. Now, I do get that my story would be utterly terrifying to many people. The thought of actually starting to make the life-changing shifts from a work routine to being your own boss is really scary, and it was for me. The comfort in this is that there is a common feeling. There might be very little hope that it'll work out, but the need still persists all the same. I had no idea how to run a business at the start, and it was difficult to get past the fear that I'd fail. So what's the action here then? What's the step forward when you're stuck in this internal struggle between freedom and fear? Well, the true question is entrepreneurship actually right for you? Will it satisfy the needs you currently have that aren't being met? If it is, then it's time to find a way. And the first step to working this out is evaluating your need for freedom and other needs in general. For this, download the workbook that I've put below, which is going to help you understand a few of your core needs and whether entrepreneurship is really going to be right for you. Or if you prefer, you can keep some kind of emotional diary. And when you do this, you might notice the same emotions come up consistently, some kind of anger, resentment, annoyance, feeling that you're not really living your life. But bear in mind that, on a specific day, you might be wanting to work on a beach rather than an office, which is ultimately a need for freedom, but it might change. It might not be the same as how you feel the week after. So following my process, you can work out the intensity of your need for freedom in relation to your fear. And that brings us on to a new way to look at it. Imagine your need for freedom like a formula. Freedom minus fear. Which one is more dominant? For example, if John has a 5 out of 10 need for freedom, but a 7 out of 10 fear, fear wins this fight. When we look at it as a formula, we can make a clear choice on whether our fear or our need for freedom is more important to us, at this time at least. But is it really the case? What might we be missing here? The future. The easiest way to consider the future is to be curious about yourself in 10 or 20 years' time, like I did. What would your future self thank you for today? Will you regret never chasing this need for freedom through the entrepreneurship which you've got a chance to do today? Or will you be content with where you are? So there's a new fear that we can really add on, which is regret. But this gets added on to the freedom need, and it might add some extra points. Possibly it might bring the 5 up to an 8. And at that point, the need for freedom outweighs the fear. It's really important not just to consider where you are right now, today, in order to reduce the regret that you might experience later in life. Us entrepreneurial types face this internal fight between our fears and our need for freedom all the time, ultimately knowing that we probably will regret not diving in despite the risks. From here, hopefully you'll be able to begin listening to and really hearing your need for freedom. When you're sick and tired of doing the same thing day in, day out at the same hours, it's your need for freedom speaking to you. And now add on another decade or two of that, where you might have kids and less time and your body isn't so young. You might have other financial commitments where it becomes even harder to take that leap. Whatever freedom looks like for you, the hope and ultimate success is that you will have it and you'll find some of your more uncomfortable emotions starting to subside. Let's get back to my story to finish off. Remember that entrepreneurship isn't an easy fix for your need for freedom. It takes a lot of work and failure, and the learning that comes from it to get to a point where you have actually met that need and experienced success within it. The early days of being an entrepreneur in some ways felt like I wasn't free at all, maybe even less so. There were some things that I had to do that, frankly, I just didn't want to do, and they just didn't feel like me. Things like sales, dealing with customer requests, not me at all. But over time, as the company became more successful, I could hire a team. And this is where the real win starts to happen. You get to work on what you're good at and what you love or are passionate about. That's a big shift. And I'm so grateful to my previous self for deciding that over 20 years ago. I had to move through a lot of fear, but I succeeded. Right now, I'm working probably more hours than I really want to in order to get my ADHD coaching program launched. But I know it'll be worth it in the end. This is a passion project for me. And my mind's okay with that negotiation, knowing that I'm working towards even more freedom and passion and meaning in my life. Every day is just a step closer to that version of freedom. Not just financial security, but true happiness. Another thing that comes to mind as you're, maybe new on your own entrepreneurial journey is that the amount of freedom that you might need can go up and down, moves around based on what's happening around you or particular days or weeks of your life. In these moments, entrepreneurship actually really offers you the flexibility for you to meet your wider needs in life, working more or more stringently at times, but offering yourself space to take a step back when you need it. I make a lot of time for my leisure these days, which would have been really hard to do 20 years ago. So if you're in your first years as an entrepreneur or someone who's even thinking about it, I'd encourage you to fill out the workbook to help you better understand your needs and emotions and how they might help you understand if it's the right path for you. In 10 years' time, I truly hope that you'll be able to look back and know that you chased after the thing that was right for you, the thing you needed out of life. If you like this kind of honest talk about entrepreneurship, please subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.